Welcome to Playing Above the Line, where we interview entrepreneurs, business owners, and community activists to get their thoughts and perspectives on leadership. Playing Above the Line is sponsored by Aviso Group, a business consulting and accounting firm focused on preparing clients for the future through innovation and positive growth. Welcome to Playing Above the Line. I'm Alan, your host. Our guest today is Michelle Crowe, and she is the founder and owner of eWork. Michelle, welcome.
Well, thank you.
So, all right, first things first, what is eWork? What do you guys do?
eWork is a marketing and advertising agency in its simplest form, but nothing's that simple, is it?
Right.
We're a full-service advertising agency, so it's broadcast, it's digital, It's print, it's promotional items, it's anything a client might need.
Gotcha. Well, so talk about the genesis of eWork, because I know that you used to be in broadcast journalism, right, for years, and then you were kind of forced maybe into making a decision. So talk about how that came about and what you did at that point.
I was in broadcast for 18 years. I should probably go back before that. I thought I was going to be a computer programmer when I went to college, and then I programmed a phone system for a radio station and got sidetracked for 18 years.
Okay.
But I got lucky that digital media entered broadcast, and so I had this little skill set that was valuable, so I did that for a long time. When I left Clear Channel Communications, I was the digital media director for the Southeast.
Okay.
My job got moved to Minneapolis in 2008.
Okay.
Do we all remember 2008?
Yeah, that was a tough year.
So I had an extra bedroom in the house and a 6-month severance package. So I emailed my clients and said, hey, this is what I'm going to do now. And within the first week, we had our first client. And how many years is that now? 13 years. So we're still doing it, and it's still going well.
Well, that's great. Let's just circle back and start with talking about maybe what your leadership style has developed into over the years.
My leadership style probably came from raising 3 daughters.
Okay.
And they were 3 very different human beings. You know, you have a child and you're like, my children are going to do this. Yeah, no, they're not. They're going to do what they want to do. So then it became identifying what they were good at and building that rather than trying to make this one do this thing. We'll figure out what they're good at. This one's good at volleyball. This one's good at singing. So let's build those strengths. The book, Now Discover Your Strengths, I think, a lot of people know that one. And that kind of hit me because I can take these kids and build what they're good at and not try to make them good at math if they're just really great at English. So that same thing goes into the workplace. Our graphic designer is a great copy editor. So everything has to go past Justin before it goes out the door because he's good at it. So I try to do that same thing in the workplace, find what they're good at, help build that strength, and try not to focus too much on what they're not good at. Somebody else is good at that part. Yeah.
What do you look for in a team member? I know the 2 of your daughters, I think, work with you, but outside of that, what do you think makes a good team member for eWork?
We have so many different roles in the company that everybody's role is a little different. A developer is a completely different dynamic than a graphic designer or a copy editor. So everybody's just a little bit different. I don't know that I look for a specific set of traits. And I hate to use the whole culture thing because that's overstated right now. They either fit in the environment or they don't. They're good at what they do. And we like them well enough. So it's really, you have a skill set and you can get along with everybody and you have some responsibility, some personal responsibility. That's probably the biggest one, personal responsibility.
Well, and you mentioned culture, but that's the thing, right? I mean, even if, and there's really no better word to describe it other than that. And it does get thrown around a lot because I don't know if you have any millennials or Gen Zers working for you, but that's a big deal to them, right, these days. And so talk about your culture at eWork. How would you describe it? What do you think is important in trying to maintain that culture? Because I'm a firm believer that you can work hard building a culture and one person can come along and tear it down in days, something you've spent years trying to build.
Yeah, I let that happen one time.
Oh, really? Okay.
I had that one guy. I'm like, all right, we're not doing that again.
Yeah.
We have a really relaxed environment. When I worked in broadcast, you always had to choose. Do I want to go to work and get the money to feed the kid, or do I want to go to the kid's volleyball game? Almost like a tug of war. And you felt, I've got to go do the thing to do the job. But wait, she needs me to be at this place. So one thing that I said when I started the business is, well, everybody wants you to build a business plan, which I now know is important. But then I was like, I don't need a business plan. I'll just start this thing. So my business plan was 2 sentences. I want to build a place where people don't have to choose between their family and their job, but they can still make a good living. So that's the kind of culture we've tried to build, that you can come in today, and if you need to come in an hour early so you can leave an hour early to go to a Easter event at your kid's school, then you can do that. But then you also have to have that personal responsibility to get the job done. So the culture is just, again, personal responsibility, but the flexibility in the schedule. So that's the culture. And on Fridays, you might see somebody in a baseball cap and a pair of flip-flops, and we're completely okay with that. And that somebody might be me.
Yeah. Understood. Yeah, it's especially great for your employees, for sure, because I know they appreciate that. But one of the things that you said I think is interesting and is good insight. We were kind of asking about the rewards and challenges of being an entrepreneur like yourself, and you said that you thought the challenges and rewards are the same, because the good thing is you're the boss and the buck stops with you.
Right.
But the bad thing is you're the boss and the buck stops with you. Right. I said the same thing last week with Anna Grantham, who owns Farm to Treat, which is a dog treat company thing here in Fairhope. So talk a little bit about that challenge of you. I mean, can you turn the entrepreneur off and concentrate fully on your family, or do you have a hard time kind of delineating that at times?
Sometimes. I mean, that's always difficult, but I do believe in being fully engaged in your moment. You know, whatever it is, if I've got 10 minutes to drive you to school, I can have a fully engaged conversation. Maybe it's only 10 minutes, but you got me for 10. And then the same thing, you know, I'm at work, don't bother me unless it's absolutely necessary. And there's a story that I tell that I've never been able to tell it without an emotion getting in it, but it was teaching me. My middle child, who is my crazy kid, I mean, she's absolutely nuts. She's going to be a trauma nurse, and if that tells you anything about her personality, like wants to.
Yeah, she's choosing that, right?
Doing that on purpose. So she was about 11 or 12 years old, and we had just started the company. We're about a year in. You know, we're still eating spaghetti. It hadn't happened yet. We're still kind of struggling. And I got a job offer in marketing in healthcare with benefits and, you know, back to easy in one sense. And I thought I was going to take it. And I told her, I was like, look, I'm thinking about taking a job. What are your thoughts on that? She's like, well, why? I said, well, I'm tired of telling you guys no. You know, no, you can't go to this thing, or no, you can't have that friend over. You can't go to this party because we just can't afford it right now. No, we can't go on vacation. She said, Mom, if you take the job, then the no's just change. I can't do it. I know. It was, no, you can't go to my volleyball game. No, you can't be home with me when I'm sick. So it just kind of changed my whole life trajectory. She was like, no, don't do it. And I was like, okay, we won't do it. We'll keep struggling.
That's amazing insight for how old was she at that time?
About 11.
Wow.
I know.
Yeah, that's great.
That's why we're still in business.
That was a decision, and luckily, I think you'd probably look back and say, luckily for you, your daughter put some perspective on it for you. So talk about the hardest decision that you've had to make. I mean, I know as the owner and the entrepreneur and the founder and the person who makes all the decisions, or all the final decisions, I'm sure you've had some tough ones. So can you pinpoint maybe the hardest or one of the hardest that you've ever had to make? Because I think all entrepreneurs are the same. I mean, there's always at some point where you're faced with, I mean, this is tough. I've got to decide what to do. It could change the trajectory of the company, my life, or whatever. So
right. My brain works like a flow chart. I think that's the computer programming. So I think I'm always kind of looking at, okay, right there's a split. You know, what happens if we do this? What happens if we do that? So I cannot, off the top of my head, think of this major life-changing decision, except for maybe buying the property for the building, because there's this moment of, that's true commitment. You know, when you're renting space, you got a couple of employees. If you decide to go get a job, it's no big deal.
Right.
Lease is up, shut her down, go. But deciding to go all in, and then a harder financial decision, we decided, I always say we, like there was somebody else there. I decided last year, the year before last, to step into full medical, vision, and dental benefits for my employees, which was terrifying, you know, because the bottom line's mine, and that's going to eat it. Yeah. But it's made such a big difference for my team, because they know if they get sick, they can go to the doctor. They know they can take care of themselves. But at the time, it was a pretty big number to have to accept. So that was probably one of the hardest decisions I made. But once it was made, it was the easiest decision.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Never thought about undoing it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. So what does a typical day look like for you? Is there a typical day in the life of the owner and operator, founder of eWork?
Okay, so there's not a typical day because everybody does do what they're supposed to do. My job now is to make sure that everyone has the resources they need and the information they need to continue to do their job. I don't really have to come in and start anything. Mm-hmm. I just have to keep everything rolling. So a typical day for me is 9 o'clock, the dog and I show up and we log onto our email.
Okay.
Everybody knows Daisy's coming to work.
Okay.
I check my email. I see what's going on there. We have a CRM tool that we use. So I check all the projects, make sure everything's on time. Mm-hmm. Cases, are they on time? So I kind of go through those and just see if anything's hung up. Mm-hmm. And then I might walk around and say, hey, do you need anything from me? And as the day goes on, hey, can I meet with you for a minute? Hey, I've got a question about this project. So I'm kind of just a support system now.
Okay. How many folks on your team now?
7.
Okay. Wow. So, yeah, you have to kind of, you really are the kind of quarterback, right?
Right.
You just kind of have to make sure everything gets done and stays going in the right direction.
And most of the time, my job is to stay out of their way because they're good at what they do.
Right.
And I don't need to get in there and mess it up.
Yeah. I think that's an important point to make. I know people, I'm sure you do too, that are micromanagers. They refuse to let people do their jobs. Either they could think they're smarter than everybody else, or they could just be control freaks or whatever. That most of the time doesn't work out very well. And
usually isn't that because they don't have the confidence that they chose the right person. I think it's a reflection back on the owner or the manager. Yeah.
Not a good trait to have, I don't think.
No, it's never effective.
Right. So talk about influences. We always ask our guests for a mentor or someone who's had an influence on your life professionally, personally. Do you have somebody that you can point to in your own life?
I have a lot of them because I had the opportunity early in this business to get a seat at the table when I really didn't know what I was doing, but I could listen. Mm-hmm. So when you're the digital media director and you're the only one in town, you get to be a department head.
Right. Yeah.
So you don't know what you're doing, but there you are. So I got to see a lot of people come before me, but more importantly, I got to meet these clients because also in that role, you meet everybody's clients. You're not just limited to your own.
Right.
So I would sit down with business owners and tell me about your plans. And some of them just fascinated me. And there's one that I'm pretty sure he doesn't even know he had anything to do with this, but Paul Schuler, he started the Rebath franchise in Mobile. And when I met him, I walked into his little office on Sage Avenue. It was one of those little strip mall centers, this little bitty box, and he's in a bathtub. He's, he's fixing it. I walked in, hi, I'm Michelle, and he climbs out of the bathtub and we talked for a little while. And by the time I left, I had a $500 a month ad campaign. And of course, I'm on cloud 9. I just got $500 a month. Right. And I got to be with him as he grew that business because we would meet once a month and he would say, well, this is what we've changed and these are the systems we put in place. Let's up the budget to this. And he just taught me so much about building a business that he probably didn't even realize because he was just telling me about stuff so I could help him market it. But it just always fascinated me watching him take that thing from absolutely nothing to, I think he was the largest franchisee they had when he finally retired. But I went in there one day, and it's funny that I'm where I am now because I went in one day. I was like, so what's next for you? He said, Michelle, I'm bored. Everybody in this place is doing what they're supposed to be doing. The systems are working, and I don't know what to do with myself. And I was like, well, that's pretty cool. Because I remember when you were building bathtubs. So I think he had a huge influence, and he probably doesn't even know it.
That's very cool. Now that you said that, I would think the goal of every entrepreneur who starts a business is to ultimately be bored.
Just get bored.
Right.
And I have those days. I walk in my office. I'm like, I don't know what to do. So I go find something to do, and then Amber, my oldest child and project manager, she's like, oh, no. I was like, I have an idea. Go back to your office. Leave us alone.
So you do work with 2 of your daughters. So talk about that dynamic. I mean, what are the challenges? I know there are some, I'm sure, because I'm thinking about my 2 kids, and I'm like, I don't know if we can work in the same building day to day. What does that look like? Have you set boundaries or do you set boundaries to delineate between the mom's role and the boss's role? I mean, what does that look like?
Okay, so it's hard sometimes. And just for your own entertainment, notice I have 3 children. 2 of them work with me.
Right.
Guess which one doesn't? My little trauma nerds. So Jordan did work with me when she was starting school, when she was in all of her pre-med stuff and all that. She did work with me, but once she got into nursing school, there's no time to do anything but that. But Amber asked me if she could come to work for me. Okay. And I told her no. No, you can't, because that family business thing, I don't want to do that, because somebody gets married and we're all out. Mm-hmm. You want to do something, and as your mom, I'm like, yeah, do it. But as your boss, I'm like, no, you can't be doing that. So I don't want that dynamic. And at the time, she was working for a medical practice in Mobile, and she's like, Mom, I work for 12 doctors. I know how to handle you. I was like, okay. So I was like, admin assistant, let's try it. You can come in and we can do this a little bit, see if this is going to work. And because she knows me so well, she knew when to come in and when not to. Like if she walked to my door and she saw whatever, she would be like, I'll come back. So she did know how I function. Mm-hmm. So she was a pretty good admin assistant. But then she really started learning the stuff. She would come in with a development problem, and she said, I was looking at this code, and I'm thinking if I did this, this would happen. And I'm like, well, that's exactly what would happen. Can I do it? Sure, go do it. And I don't even know how long she's been there now, but now she's my COO. She's just really that good at it. And we have found that line, but every now and then it does kind of pose a problem because she says, I need to do this. And I'm like, well, a sick day. And you're like, well, as your mom, how are you doing? But as your boss, are you going to be able to get some of that stuff done from home? Right. It's this weird dynamic. The youngest is my admin assistant now. Okay. And she's only been doing this for about 6 months. She's not really found her place yet, but she's 19 years old. Mm-hmm. So she's learning her way around it. She has so many business ideas that I have to make her go sit down somewhere. I'm like, no, you can't do that right now, but write it down. We'll see about implementing it. So the dynamic's not really that hard now that we've laid the boundaries, but there are still those days.
Yeah. Well, boundaries is key, right? I mean, you got to have that understood, I think, going in. And I think that's why it's been a success.
I think so, too. Yeah. And they know I will fire them, too, if I have to. Yeah. But I don't need to, because they're doing a pretty good job. Yeah,
very good. Let me ask you about this, and I think that you've managed to put into one sentence what I've been trying to condense maybe for myself for years, but we ask you about advice. What advice would you give somebody that wants to do, or just in general, who wants to do what you do, or just to be an entrepreneur or whatever? And you said that your household and workplace mantra is, if you control what you can, there will be time to manage what you can't.
Yes.
I love that. Talk about that.
Well, that goes back to those kids. When you're raising 3 girls, I mean, it's like herding cats, I mean, they're all over the place. So we would get in that routine, and I was like, okay, what kind of things can I take out of the mix? And it became, on Tuesday mornings, I filled up my car with gas. Mm-hmm. So I was never on the way to a dance recital and we got to stop and get gas. Or, Monday night's grocery night, Tuesday night's gas night, Wednesday night we have dinner out together. And we kind of put these little systems in place so that we didn't get those surprises. Mm-hmm. And when I started the business, we kind of started doing the same thing. Okay, when we would have some event happen, which we all have happen, we say, okay, which of these things were in our control and we didn't expect them? Mm-hmm. I mean, how did we let this surprise us? Some things you can't, but some things you can. So if we control all the things that we can, then there's enough time in our day to manage those things that we can't control, because they're going to happen. Right. But they shouldn't all be emergencies. Yeah. So that kind of just came into play, and now I try to live by it. Now, I don't always do it successfully, but I try.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And really, when I read it, I was kind of coming at it from a different angle. I asked this question to a lot of my guests, and I want to ask you, so I'll give you a heads up at the end.
Okay.
But so I asked the question, what advice would you give your 18-year-old self? Okay. Mm-hmm. And Carrie's heard me ask that question a lot, and so one day she said, well, what advice would you give your 18-year-old self? And I thought, well, I never really had thought about it, but at the time I said, well, I would just have more confidence, believe in yourself, believe that even though you're young, your opinions have worth, your skill set that you bring, even at that stage in your life, has value, right? So just be confident.
Right.
Well, the more I thought about it, I was like, well, maybe that's not exactly what I would tell my 18-year-old self. I think I would tell myself to spend time worrying about and concentrating on and working on things that you can control, and don't dwell on the things that you can't. And so when I read that kind of came to my mind, because I think that some people are worriers more than others, but I think a lot of people spend a lot of time and energy worrying about things that they have absolutely no control over, no matter what they do, say, what kind of plans they make, they will never be able to affect the outcome of that particular thing that they're worrying about, right?
Right.
And so I just think people would be much more happy, content, less stress if they would spend time working on things and concentrating on things that they have control over. So that's what I thought about when I read that sentence. And so anyway, that's great advice. I love that.
Well, and I tell everybody at work and at home, just don't let your sail get caught in somebody else's wind.
Mm-hmm.
You chart your course. Do not let anybody change your course unless you're in agreement with it.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, we'll start to wrap up, but talk about your vision for eWork. You've been doing this for 13 years. I don't necessarily love the 5-year vision thing, but if you look down the road a year or two, where do you see the business, or where would you like to see it in?
Well, I'm in that funny place in life right now where I am looking at that 10-year, I'll probably exit then, So for the next 10 years, what do I want to do? I mean, how do I want this thing to function? What do we want to do? And I really do love working in the industrial space. I really do. And, we're working in oil and gas, and now we're looking at a company that they produce heat exchangers. Nobody wants to do that but me. So I'm like, ooh, that'll be fun. Let's do that. Uh-huh. And I think that just continuing to learn, because that's been so much fun for me, is you just get to learn about everybody's business and how they function and the systems and the structures, and it's really fascinating. So I really think for the next 10 years, I just want us to keep doing what we're doing and do more of it. It's fun and it's working and we do a good job at it, and I don't really need to change a whole lot, but I've got to keep putting those people on the ladder so that when I do decide not to come to work one day, there's a plan.
Yeah, it keeps on rocking. Very good.
Because there are 125 clients that are going to want me to come to work until somebody else will take care of it.
Right. Yeah, understood. That's great. All right, so back to my question. 18-year-old Michelle, what advice would you give yourself at 18?
I'm going to take somebody else's advice and give it back to you.
All right.
Because I love Andy Andrews.
Okay.
And one of my favorite lines in his books is, don't believe everything you think.
That's a good one.
Because, you get it in your head when you're that age that you know everything and you know everything about everything. And you've got this limited amount of influence in your life, and you only know what you were taught. And you can't believe everything you think. So open your mind and listen to other people and ask them why they think that instead of telling them they're wrong. Yeah. I think he summed it up with that one, and he's smarter than I am, so we're going to use his advice.
Yeah, he's a good one. He's come up several times on the podcast. Any other authors that you enjoy?
I'm a reader, so I just devour books. Malcolm Gladwell.
Okay.
I like books that make you think about what you think about, not necessarily give you information, but make you question your own reality. Freakonomics books, I love those. Okay. So just any of those type books, but not necessarily a specific author.
Yeah, gotcha. All right. Last question before we let you go. I know you got things to advertise and digitize and all that stuff that you do over there at eWork.
And whatever you do.
Yeah, whatever you do over there. All right. So we're at the local karaoke bar, and you have to choose your go-to solo and duet.
Oh no!
I will take your solo song you're singing and your duet, and optional. You can give me your duet partner. You don't necessarily have to. Some people have. What are you singing at the karaoke bar?
Oh, my. Okay, so first thing you should know is there are 4 women in my household. 2 of them are vocalists, and 2 of them are tone deaf.
Okay.
I'm one of the latter. Right. So it's best that I don't karaoke, but occasionally that might happen. And now I have to come up with a song. I have no idea. It'll be some 80s hair band is what it'll be. It'll be it'll be a Bon Jovi song or something, And
I can take that.
And the ones I'm thinking of, I'm not putting on this mic. And if I had to pull my karaoke partner, it would be my friend Jill, because she sings a little bit better than I do. Not a lot, but she doesn't care. And we've karaoke'd a few times.
Very good, very good. All right. Well, Michelle, thank you so much. This has been great. We'll link your social media and contact information in show notes. And if folks want to see what eWork does, they can go check you guys out there. So, Michelle, thanks a lot. This has been great.
Thank you for inviting me.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. And if you did, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe on iTunes and Spotify. It definitely helps us in the ratings, and it also makes it easier for other folks to find the podcast. And as always, a big thank you to producer and editor Carrie Wolf. Playing Above the Line is sponsored by Aviso Group. If you want to know more about who we are and what we do, you can visit our website at avisogroup.com. That's AVIZO group.com. You can also check us out on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Thanks for listening.